Good evening, everyone. I'm joined here tonight with Andrew Yeoman. As you know, he was on the Friday night show to talk about his protest against the film Machete, and now he's joined with us tonight for a follow-up. Andrew, welcome on my show. Welcome back. You were on here a while back, so it's good to have you back on.
Thank you. It's glad to be back.
So where exactly did this protest take place? It was a movie theater in San Francisco.
No, the actual theater that we protested at was in a little town in East Bay called Livermore. And Livermore is kind of an older, more conservative community, and it has, pretty friendly demographics for us. However, like most cities across the Bay Area, that's rapidly changing for a more Hispanic and a more Asian population. However, it's a small town, and it has a lot of great local flavor there, and a lot of nice things about it. And we chose the main downtown theater where they were playing Machete, and so that's where we were at. We went out from about 5 p.m. until about 7 or 8 p.m., and it was really an overwhelmingly positive response to our flyers and the message that we were putting out.
And you guys, you were carrying around actual machetes.
That's right. Well, our machetes were very special machetes. They were not necessarily made out of metal. To save costs, we got some cardboard boxes, and we cut them all out and spray painted them black, and then we spray painted the edges with a red, kind of like a spray kind of mist, so it looks like blood on the blade of the machete, and then we put some twine in between two of them and held them over our necks, maybe 2 or 4 or 6 at a time, much like the character Machete did. And that's how we protested with machetes at this protest.
And I know you got into this on the Friday night show, but can you sort of give us just like a brief overview of the plot line of the film?
Sure. So Machete was a film by Robert Rodriguez, who is a really interesting director. He makes a variety of children's movies and grindhouse specials, which grindhouse is a form of movie making that has copious amounts of gore and death and destruction and all that kind of stuff. And it was more popular in like the 70s and so-called black exploitation films. And
Mr. Kind of
Rodriguez,
he was modeling it on those old films from the 70s, kind of about like showing blacks getting revenge on their slaveholders. And then we had this film out on a similar note, Inglourious Basterds. So it's kind of all along that line.
Exactly. And Mr. Rodriguez is friends with Quentin Tarantino, who made Inglourious Basterds. And what really brought this film to my attention was last Cinco de Mayo, last May or whenever that is, when they released a trailer called the Arizona edition to the trailer, saying that this was not a real movie, that this is just a fun little project we did to send a message to the people of Arizona. And in that message, there's the character Machete, who goes around and hacks to death all the white people he can find to get revenge for some illegal immigrants or something like that. And it was a very controversial trailer, and is very political and very gory. And it was quite clear what his message was, that if the people of Arizona enforced the illegal immigration legislation that they passed, then people like Machete would come out and hack to death white people. And I found that extremely offensive, but it wasn't until the last couple of months that it was actually made clear that this was actually a real movie that was being released, and that they released a new trailer, a little bit more PC than the last one. And I was just thinking to myself about this last weekend, what can we do to respond to this film that is essentially advocating for white people to be massacred en masse? what can we do to raise awareness about this issue? And that's when I had an aha moment, and I started a Facebook group entitled Stop Machete, and we created some flyers and started networking with people, and we started a nationwide campaign to try to pull this film out of movie theaters.
And how has the media coverage been doing with your campaign against Machete?
Well, it's gone extremely well. The results of this it's been kind of a big learning experience for me, because something that we did different this time is we sent out a press release to all the major news organizations saying that we're going to be protesting this film with actual machetes. And we immediately got some responses from Russia Today, from SF Weekly, and a variety of other people, NBC, ABC. Not all of those panned out, but I was able to give a live television interview on Russia Today, and that was seen internationally, and I was able to get a couple of other newspaper articles posted about this.
Including the mainstream Bay Area papers.
That's correct. Well, SF Weekly is the edition that it appeared on was online, but it's a fairly popular blog, and it got a lot of comments about it right away, and a lot of people found out about this, and especially with the Russian Today clip. We got an overwhelming response from people online, offline, and all over people that had seen that. So it was really a pretty tremendous media response that we were able to generate. Basically, an idea that I had sitting in my bedroom the couple days previously.
Do you think that the coverage was fair and accurate?
Well, there's a few things that were not accurate. For example, in the Russian Today interview, the news anchor woman, she said how that movies are something that are a family-orientated event that everyone can go to and not be harassed with political protest, etc. Well, there's nothing really about the movie Machete that is family-friendly, so I don't really know what she's talking about at that point. Another point was with the SF Weekly blog. They characterized us as a white nationalist organization, which was incorrect. We're a national anarchist organization, and
I guess it's better than being called a white supremacist, but that is inaccurate because that's not how you guys describe yourselves.
Right. It's like if someone would be calling a Democrat a Republican in the newspaper, there would be, a big outrage about that. So why these media people cannot get their names right and cannot call us what we actually call ourselves is actually very insulting and demeaning.
And they didn't even use the word national anarchist once in the article.
Right. And we've been described previously in the SF Weekly as a white separatist organization, which is a fair description of our political outlook. However, based on racial politics alone, you're going to be called every name in the book, from a Nazi to a white supremacist to evil, racist, blah blah blah. They really don't have that many names to call you, but they'll throw all of them at you.
Yeah, even if don't even talk about race, any views that are politically incorrect or stuff having to do with immigration, they're just going to call you a racist no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, there was some Mexican supporters of the film Machete joined our Facebook group, and what was their first insult towards us? They called us rednecks. Yeah,
I saw your group. I saw someone hassling with you, calling you like a racist. Or forget what it was, but I see what you're saying.
Talk about irony.
Yeah.
So
what was the people going into the film? Did you interact with the people who were going in to watch the film when you were there?
Yes. So when we got set up, we we stood outside, we handed out our machetes, and when people were coming around, we would pass out the flyer and try to talk to them about the movie and what we were protesting about. And we had some media people come out. We had a local journalist for a newspaper come and ask us a bunch of questions about who we were and what we were doing. In fact, in that newspaper article, they called my name wrong. They called me a Steve Yeoman, not Andrew Yeoman, which is just bizarre. I think she's kind of a senile boomer journalist. But yeah, so we would go out, we'd just talk to people, and we'd hand out the flyers, and, it was really low-key, no pressure kind of thing. If people didn't want a flyer, it's fine, no big deal. And a lot of people didn't know.
What did the flyers say?
The flyer, it can be found on the BANA website at BayAreaNationalAnarchist.com, and it essentially says that Machete is anti-white hatred, and that we believe that it's designed to greenlight violence against white Americans, and we include a bunch of source material and facts about the film, and we put in the demand or the request that people tell the managers of the movie theaters that this movie should be pulled from the theater and that they don't want it in their community.
Did you get a chance to speak with the movie theater owner?
I did. We went into the theater towards the end of our protest, and I talked to one of the managers present and gave them the flyer and asked them to pull the film. And they were very polite. I was polite, and we walked out. No big deal. So,
what did the people have to say who were the patrons of the film?
A couple of them were just kind of incredulous that somebody could be protesting this film. And however, when I would explain to them the facts of what they're really watching and supporting is about, then the kind of little light switch would go on in their mind, and they would kind of understand and get it that this actually has a lot of racial overtones in the film, especially that targets them as white Americans. There was whites and Hispanics that were friends that were going in to watch the film together, and they were both kind of incredulous, but we made our point, and at the end of the film, I guarantee you that they were thinking about the ethnic dimensions of what the film Machete was about.
That's the thing with these films. It's the same with Inglourious Bastards. Most of the people who go to these films, they just go there for entertainment. They like to see the blood and the gore. They don't really care about the political message. But so you're trying to get them to think about that. What were the demographics of the people seeing the film?
I wasn't able to catch everyone's demographics that were going in to see it, and honestly, at the theater that we were going at, maybe only a dozen or so people were going to see it. And I would say that there was either young Hispanics or young whites with a lot of tattoos and kind of angry-looking clothing, and the kind of people that like the LA kind of slasher film style. Was the primary people that were going in there. When we were talking to elderly white folks that had never heard of the film, they were pretty shocked about hearing about the content of the film.
And you were the only people there who were protesting?
Yes. And there was, some things I thought about doing, like bringing a bullhorn or having a big banner. We didn't think about that until too late. But that would have added a nice touch to the protest. We would have gotten cars honking as they were driving by. When protests, the whole idea is to get a bunch of people out to, some space and make a lot of noise about the issue and try to make some change happen through nonviolent means. And, I like to make protests pretty low-key affairs and not a big risk for participants or for people on the street. So, that's how we played it out.
And no one really was hostile or gave you a hard time when you were there?
Nah, not one. Even the journalists were friendly towards us. The photographers was friendly. There was police that were nearby, but they didn't give us any hassle. So it was overall, I considered a very successful campaign and protest. And some interesting things have developed out of it. In particular, there is a lot of blogs that talk about movies and films, and they've picked up about this protest, and so they're blogging about this left and right. There's at least 4 different blogs that made an article about it in the last day. I put them all on the Facebook group, and they're all talking about how, crazy it is to protest this film, blah, blah, blah. It's not about identity politics. It's just about, the slash and hack, but really, the facts are that they're reacting to our protest and they're giving us a bunch of free publicity for it. And those people that read those articles are going to be wanting to know, what is this national anarchism about? What are the Bay Area national anarchists about? And that way they'll be able to find more things about our positions and who we are.
Especially in the local, if you think about it, then as the Bay Area papers, people are going to read about that. And it'll probably be good for recruitment. But, I think people are picking up on this because, even look at the SPLC. They did a huge article on your guys' organization.
That's right. And one thing that has kind of bothered me about all of these things is that the response that I got after the TV interview was really kind of interesting. One, it sadly taught me that, unfortunately, people really only begin to respect you when you appear in the media, which I think is an extremely sad fact of life. I don't know of a way around that. But we got a lot of kudos for that, and a lot of kudos for being on TV as a white separatist. And what kind of bothered me about that is that really there shouldn't be just 1 or 2 white separatists on television at any time. There should be 1,000. It shouldn't just be Jared Taylor and David Duke or this one time for myself. There should be 1,000 different white folks out there that are able to hit a hot button item, a hot topic on people's minds, and get in front of a...
That's the term, you're saying isn't that the term that the SPLC article used to describe you as a separatist?
Yes, I believe that's one of the terms. And see, national anarchism, it may be more accurately described as tribalism, and you can read up more about what that is, and you can read our position statement to see what our specific political agenda is. But a tribalist looks at things besides just ethnicity and cultural heritage and values. They look at your religion, your language, if you're reliable, if you're unreliable, etc. So there's all these additional traits that a national anarchist looks for in a person or the community that they want to organize around. So, we don't look at things from just a purely racial angle, because we feel that ignores so many other issues that are of great importance. And so it's kind of... It's kind of a work in progress to kind of figure out that kind of tribal relationships between each other as individuals and as groups, and just kind of reconnecting in a local way that we recognize our tribal differences. We work together where we agree on an issue, or we don't work together when we don't agree on an issue. But we're still all comrades, and we're still all in this together. But where I would think nationalist movements in the past have gotten caught up, where everyone in a nationality is automatically included in their political agenda.
The thing about those movements is that they force people into something, or the same way people who talk about carving up the country into different zones and forcing people to live in a certain area based on their ethnicity, but your idea is more about giving people freedom of choice, and people can have that option.
Yeah, because, there's simple facts of life that as a small political movement, we are never going to be able to tell somebody, hey, you have to live in a ethnically exclusive community. That's not right for everybody. Not everybody wants it. Some people prefer to live in a place like LA or New York or whatever. And for those people, that's fine. They can do that. But what we're saying is for those of us that do want to live in a homogeneous community where we don't have to worry about multiculturalism or multiracialism being forced down our throats, they have to respect that. And if they don't respect that, there's going to be problems.
Yeah, because they're the kind of the ones that want to force. They're the ones that are forcing their will on people. I mean, there's people on the set who are in the separatist movement who, if they had their way, they would force people to be in areas they don't want to do whatsoever. But they're not in power. It's the people in power who are forcing this kind of forced multiculturalism on everyone.
Right. And so that's why we say that the issue of, say, illegal immigration is not the immigrants. It really has nothing to do with the immigrants at all. It has everything to do with the system in power. If the system in power wasn't creating this situation in the first place, immigrants wouldn't be an issue at all. But, and there's still really not an issue if we can change the system or we can become more powerful than the system, then we won't have anything to really worry about. So, it's a big, complex kind of issue. Do you think
that there's a danger in this film kind of stirring up violence and a lot of sentiment of the film, or do you think people just sort of take it lightly who watch it?
I think that we're going to find the crazy oddball Hispanic that sees it and thinks it's a great idea to try to imitate. That's what I'm really worried about. And I really hate to see our people victimized by foreigners that come here to either both not only just take their jobs, suck up all their social services, and lower the quality of life of their communities, but then get butchered by them. And we already see that in vast cases of drunk driving, etc. But what I'm really afraid of is seeing just, a couple of these guys go crazy from watching this film, thinking it's something that it should be worth creating, that they should do in real life. You see the same thing with the Beavis and Butthead cartoons. You're going to see it with a live action film like this.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's inevitable that because when you have a film like this with a powerful political message, there's all kinds of nuts out there who are going to take stuff literally, and you can't. I mean, we have to have freedom of speech, and we can't censor stuff. I'm all for we have to have freedom of speech, but it's something like this that is dangerous. I mean, we also have our freedom of speech to go out there and oppose it and to expose what it's all about.
Yeah, and this film, like no other, really highlights the agenda of the Hollywood elite, where all white Americans are expendable and worthy or should be killed for being either racist or for just having white skin. And that's something that we should all be concerned by. And it was if the roles were reversed, if a Hollywood film came out saying that white people should go out and kill all the Hispanics or kill all the blacks or whatever, there'd be a huge outrage. Huge. I mean, it would be of an international incident. However, attacking us for some reason is okay. And I want to make a change to that. And I'm very grateful for a bunch of people around the country who also went out and protested the theaters in their community with the same message, the same flyer, and got people to not go to the film.
That all goes back. So this is happening all across the country. You've inspired other splinter groups to go out there and to protest against it.
Yeah. It's it's not so much me. I just kind of thought of it. We started networking and really
what's the core thing about the film is it's basically talking about the character in the film Machete is going out and trying to assassinate this politician played by Robert De Niro. He's a senator who's against illegal immigration. And can you imagine the outrage if a film like incited the assassination of senators who, let's say, were pro-illegal immigration or pro-Israel or whatever? Can you imagine, like, the outrage? I think the directors would probably they'd be investigated by the Secret Service, and they'd be in all kinds of legal trouble if they made a film like that, let's say inciting the assassination of a politician who was, like, pro-immigration or pro-Israel or had some kind of establishment position.
Yep, exactly. It's the huge double standard.
It could incite that. I think it could incite people to go out and attack just white people on the street, but it could also incite violence against politicians who are outspoken against illegal immigration.
Right. Yeah, so this film really is a multi-level threat against our people, against our representatives, and it's scary that this system knows that it can get away with making a film like this and making millions of dollars off of it.
And what's really ironic is when we had this hate crimes bill, and that was in the Senate, there was this clause. It ended up being struck down, but there was this clause that's from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which said if someone who's in talk radio or in the media incites a person to go out and commit like a violent act, they could be charged under that crime. But that, even though that part wasn't enacted into law, this film is doing the exact same thing that the same people who support that hate crimes law or the civil rights clause are doing by this film.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking a little bit about that, how the film could tie in with that clause of the Civil Rights Act that could have someone charged with a crime if their broadcasting inspires some kind of incites some kind of violent crime.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think it's possible, and it's something that we need to be concerned by. We were able to generate within 5 days, 6 days, about 300 people that were concerned about this film and wanted to see it put to a stop. So that just goes to show you how quickly our communities can get activated and involved on issues that affect people of European descent. So all in all, like, there's the lessons to be learned is that we must hit the streets to represent our people, and if we don't do that, we do not deserve the rights or the privilege of saying that we want our own separate white homeland. If you do not go out and hit the streets to make this happen, you are aiding the enemy chip away at our folk on a day-to-day basis. And that's really all it comes down to. And, this we didn't have any illusions that we're going to get this film pulled out of theaters, or that, some people were afraid that we were calling for censorship and whatnot. That's missing the point. The fact is that we were challenging a film that is directly threatening the existence of our people, and that is unacceptable now, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, and throughout the rest of time. And that's something that I feel very passionate about, very strongly about, and I really hope all of your listeners do as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of shocked about the content of the film. It basically is inciting genocide in a way, and you were saying that the machete is kind of the international weapon, like places like Africa and South America. It's a weapon that is used in genocide.
Right. So, yeah, a lot of lessons were learned from this campaign, and my real hope in the future is that we can get 1,000 other people across America coming out, not just on the streets, but in front of the video cameras, in front of the journalists, in front of the reporters, and saying, this is what we believe, and we're not going to back down. You can call us whatever names you want, it doesn't matter. And, I don't know exactly what it's going to take for us to get to that point yet, but that's the direction we have to be moving towards.
That's just the thing about it is if for there to be change in anything, people need to get out there and to protest stuff. Because I mean, if you think about the sheer numbers of people who are outraged about stuff, I mean, they're just sitting at home and they're on the computer. But if they were all active out in public, they can make a vast impact.
Oh yeah. We have pretty big issue with that locally, just getting people out in public and streets, and there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of fear of being called these names or being associated with it, or fear of job prospects. And as I've been out in the open now for 2 years, and I have some pretty blatant tattoos on my body that pretty much everyone sees, and there is really nothing to fear other than this fear itself. It's really ridiculous how it gets so big in people's minds, but it's really not that big of a deal. So, but I mean, again, that comes out to broader issues, and there is kind of like you said, there is a lot of people outraged, but there's a lack of any voice of that. And, that's our job as activists and media producers and radio show hosts to really kind of inspire people to take that next step, that, there is nothing wrong with representing your people in public. It's the right thing to do, and that's what, as just from a pure perspective of duty, it's something you have to do. Yeah,
I mean, the more people are saying, the more people are active, then people are less intimidated because it doesn't carry that stigma.
Yeah. And, for us to be successful, for our people to have any future at all, people are going to have to stand up. If they don't stand up, we're just going to bow down and disappear from history, the world stage, everything that's our people have created and invented will eventually disappear, actually pretty quickly. If any major city in America is used as an example, such as my hometown, Detroit, is a pretty good example of that. Baltimore, D.C., there's many examples of all the finest things of our folks' contribution to the world being disintegrated by those that don't care about it, or might not have the capability of making it continue.
It's happening all over the place. I mean, California is a prime example. It's on the front line of this, and it's happening at such a rapid rate. It's just really remarkable.
Yeah. If current trends continue, which I don't believe they will for a long enough time frame, it's going to be just devastating. And what we would look forward to, if the system remains stable, if people stay at home and on their computers for a long enough time, if the beer in the refrigerator is still there, and the football on TV is still on TV, our future is going to look like the great country of Zimbabwe, which, as a lot of your listeners probably knows, was once called Rhodesia. And Rhodesia was a European-descended country that created one of the greatest agricultural industries in the world, and created great prosperity for its people, free education, and free hospital services for all people. And over less than a decade or so, maybe 5 years, when the current dictator, Robert Mugabe, came to power, it's all disappeared. And I believe
the same with South Africa is also headed in that direction.
I believe that we have our own Mugabe in power right now, and that scares me more than anything.
Yeah, he's definitely Obama. It's just, and every president, even Bush, every president that we've had is just, maybe Obama is definitely probably one of the worst, but it's not just Obama. I don't want to make it into this whole cult of personality. It's the whole political structure that we've had, and every president, all the past presidents that we had for the last 30, 40 years have all been progressively worse, but they've all been part of the same system.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And that's why I've rejected any platform or party or strategy that thinks that we can reform this system for what it is, because the forces aligned against that from happening are too powerful, and it is too late to make changes from, plugging the hole in a Titanic. And
so then, if the political system can't be, I agree with you, it can't be reformed, it's just too corrupted, but how would national anarchism be implemented?
Well, my vision is to start small and work your way up. And starting small can be in a single household. It can be in a single neighborhood block. It can be in a single community. Starting small, developing a base of power, real political power, which means people that care about each other, they pledge loyalty to each other, they will back each other up in a fight if something goes down, and really taking care of local community interest, economics, and services without government interference or control, or as little bit as possible. And, slowly, gradually building yourself off, weaning yourself off of the grid, and developing an independent source of income and independent lifestyle that will allow you to live autonomously from the system when it does break down. So that's kind of a work in progress, and it's going to be different for every different region in the country and the world. But that's the only solution
it's the idea is kind of like localism. Would you think that localism would be a more accurate term than anarchism? Because I think a lot of people, they hear the term anarchism, they kind of get this, they have this perception, whether it's a misconception or not, that's just the absolute absence of any government or any form of organization, just sort of absolute chaos. So it's more in a sense, it's kind of the idea of localism.
Yeah, that's true, and I don't have a problem calling it that. I just like to use anarchism because it gets people thinking outside of the box, and it challenges people to think and question the dogmas, and that's really what the Bay Area National Anarchists have been doing for the last 3 years, and other groups around the world. So, it is a work in progress. There's different ways to go about it. There's what I call explicit national anarchism, which is like BANA or other groups, and there is implicit national anarchism, people that might not know about the ideology or the strategy and the tactics that national anarchism uses, but it's implicitly the same thing. And there's a bunch of different communities out there and traditions that are similar. I think the Amish are a tradition that's very similar to the national anarchist ideal. Mormons at least used to have community standards that were very similar to what we have in mind. So we have a bunch of native traditions already that we can tap into or encourage more people behaving in that kind of way to have a greater effect on our folk as a whole.
So the cool thing about that is you wouldn't even need to take over the political system. You just start up from the bottom. And we're having more local-oriented economies, and it would just inevitably just force the system to reform itself, because people would have less need for a larger government, and not just larger government. People would no longer need large corporations and large banks.
Exactly. It would re-inspire a artisan economy, craftsmanship, real goods and services, as opposed to virtual fake goods and, financial services, etc., that characterize global capitalism. And I think that we would be able to hold our own future in a much easier way than, for example, the Walmart model, where everything in the warehouse comes from China, which, in my opinion, is not a very good long-term economic strategy.
Yeah, I mean, we can't be dependent on. I mean, that's the worst case, but we can't be dependent on other nations for our economy. We have to have local-based economies.
Yeah, and it really doesn't matter how much more expensive that makes it. The long-term benefit of that makes it worthwhile. So, I'm not really a big person in economics. I know it's not really my field of expertise, but those are things that we have to be doing just as average Americans in order to get by and not worry about having to lose your full-time job. You have your part-time gig and your small business, and your needs are set. You don't need to worry about flipping houses or, your stock market gambles or your mutual funds or any other that people rely on these days to make money in investments. Instead, people will invest in their community. They'll invest in each other. They'll invest in the next generation to be there for them, instead of taking off across the country or the world, as happens for a lot of people in the upwardly mobile generation.
So you've also been doing activism with this case in Vancouver, where this woman it was basically a interracial hate crime where she had acid thrown on her face.
That's right. I'm in contact with Bethany Storrow's family, and I'm trying to organize support for her and her recovery on Facebook, and encouraging people, if they were touched by her story, to donate a small sum to her bank so that she can have something to recover from. And it's a really terrible story. We see a lot of examples of acid attacks in Europe by Muslims, and now we're seeing it here with blacks against whites, which I'm kind of suspecting that that assault was, like, say, a gang initiation or something like that. But Bethany's example of just rising to the occasion and being really hopeful and positive about everything that has happened to her is really inspirational, and she quotes her Christian faith as providing the bedrock for her to do that, and I think she's a very amazing young woman.
So you've been fundraising for that. You've been doing a lot of work on that, because like this kind of stuff, and the media usually doesn't even pay attention to a lot of these stories.
Yeah, well, it did generate a lot of interest because, of course, attacks like this are very rare, and
it's rare. It seems to be more common in Europe,
right.
Associated with more Muslims seem to do it the most. But it hasn't really caught on with minority groups in the United States as much.
Yeah. So, that's a campaign that, is important to us to, again, we got to go out there and we got to support our people that are attacked and assaulted for their ethnicity or for just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Whenever a white person gets attacked, we have to be there for them. We're not chasing ambulances, but we're offering our support. And that's really important. There was a case, earlier in this year with so-called Epic Beard Man, Tom Brusso in Oakland, California, got attacked by a black in a bus, and the video went on YouTube and went viral, and millions of people watched it. And I was involved with Epic Beard Man as well, and we were able to raise several $100,000 for his support. And, I think that this is an area that more white folks, more white activists should consider pursuing. And we should definitely take an attack on one white person as attack on all of us. Bethany Storrow's story is just like if this would happen to your sister or to your niece or to your mom or someone that you know, like you got to take it that seriously, because that's what ethnic identity politics is about. It's about taking your people seriously.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, I mean, they'll try to call us the usual names for doing this, but I mean, the other side, the gay activists, they did the whole thing of Matthew Shepard and the blacks of James Byrd, like all these groups, and the ADL, and the ADL was founded about the whole thing of Leo Frank. So all these other groups, they're doing it. So it's really an important thing to speak out about.
Yep, this is maybe 1,000 times more important than the Jews. It's maybe 10,000 times more important than the blacks. It's 50,000 times more important than the Hispanics. It's our own people, and that's what we got to focus on. And I really don't understand why people are ignoring their own peoples or supporting their own people when and they choose to talk on these other less important topics. You know, it's a missing priorities, and you know.
So you're saying you think certain topics that you consider to be counterproductive that people do focus a lot on?
Oh yeah, hands down. That's been the story of the so-called white nationalist movement or neo-Nazi movement since the 1960s with George Lincoln Rockwell. What did George Lincoln Rockwell do? Well, he made a lot of inflammatory statements and essentially alienated most people that would have been otherwise conservative and more sympathetic by using certain symbols and certain figures that were alien to the American political experience. And we can't do that anymore. We don't have time to F around with these kinds of ideologies or symbols that don't work, and also the topics that we talk about. You know, we should not be talking about other races 99% of the time. We should be talking about our race 99% of the time. You know, just really simple reframing the issue, because it's not really about what they're doing and you know how bad they are. It's about what we're doing.
You're absolutely right. I mean, other groups do play a role, but most of the problems is it's our own making. We're doing it all to ourselves.
Exactly, and that's why
I think it's easy. I mean, it's a lot of that stuff. People wanna. I think it's easier to find kind of a scapegoat, and I'm not giving these other groups a free pass, but it's just easier to blame everything on some kind of other group than to take responsibility and to own up for yourself. It's kind of like the way some blacks will go on and on about how the white man is keeping them down instead of owning up to responsibility.
You're exactly right. That's a great example. Yeah. So, you know, then that's what we got to do, and you know, it's a good fight, it's a worthy cause, and you know, I'm going to hopefully be active for as long as I'm humanly capable of doing so.
Yeah, so that's the thing is that it's about dissolving ourselves of responsibility. And I've said this before. The thing with the government, people blame all our country's problems on either the government or political parties, politicians, political interest groups. But I mean, it's just average Americans. They're apathetic. A lot of them are spoiled. They don't want to go out and do stuff. They're caught up in entertainment culture. So it's just putting the blame. We have to put a lot of the blame on ourselves and take responsibility. It's much easier to blame other people for their own problems. Right,
and that's what adults do. They accept responsibility, and you know, it's not 100% our fault. It's not really anyone's real fault, but we have a shared responsibility to stepping up and owning these issues and doing something that will change it. And that's something that we can all do in our own small way.
You've definitely been doing this with your activism and protesting against that film. I just want to thank you for being on here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here as well.